like a drop of rain in an ocean, like a drop in the sea. But many, many nations still got to learn from we, how we aspire and we achieve. It's so hard to believe the unity that is so unique. It's fantastic, yes, so to speak. It's fantastic, yes, it is, the way how we live as one. In integration, all the nation is second to none. Here the Negroes, the white man, the Chinese, the Indian, we walk together in hand. In this wonderland of Calypso, in this wonderland of steel band.
Good evening and welcome again to another episode of the DPTT Speaks. This evening we are going to talk about the economy. We have gotten to that stage where we cannot delay it anymore, and we're going to talk about the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. This perhaps is one of the most important episodes that we will ever do, because whatever we plan, no matter how well we plan it, no matter how well our intentions, all of it can only come into reality if we have the money to make it happen. And as it stands right now, Trinidad and Tobago need to look at the economy in a serious way. So let me start by saying that we are in big trouble. I know no one likes to hear that. They want to hear good news. But the reality is that we have declining resources. Our oil and gas reserves are declining to the point where, unless we find new sources of oil and gas, we have no more than about 10 years supply. So that's not good. In addition to that, the demand for oil and gas globally is going down and projected to go down even more, and drastically so, because of the new technology that you have in automobiles and so on. That alone, the impact of that alone, is going to have a negative impact on the oil and gas prices globally. But you add to that the increase in supply of oil and gas, that increase in supply from Canada, from the United States, and from non-traditional suppliers of oil and gas, places Trinidad and Tobago in a position where it becomes not only necessary and essential, but almost urgent for us to look at finding some new sources of income. So rather than come to you and say, look, things are fantastic and all that, I have to say that it's not the projections. As it stands right now, it's not good. So let's be honest with ourselves. Let's ask ourselves some really pertinent questions. Tell me, what do you know as a citizen? Think about it. What do you know as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago as the long-term plan for the economy? What is it? Well, if you find yourself asking the question and not getting an answer among yourselves, because there isn't anything that has been communicated to the people of Trinidad and Tobago that tells you this is the long-term plan. Only tonight, when on my way to taping this show, I listened to one of the politicians talking about the economy, and again, the whole gist about the conversation was an increase in exploration for oil and gas. So it's almost like you run out of ideas, and all you can do is go back to what you know, which is oil and gas and oil and gas, in spite of the fact that things are changing, or things have changed globally. So people are now saying you know, perhaps what we need to do is find more oil and more gas so we can get more money. But the market has changed. So are we positioned to deal with the change in the market? Are we positioned to deal with the challenges, the economic challenges of the next 10 to 15 years, or in the long term, even the next 20 to 30 years? That is important. So rather than tell you about the doom and gloom, let's think about what the Democratic Party of Trinidad and Tobago will do when we come into office. Because that's why we are asking you to vote for the Democratic Party of Trinidad and Tobago. We are asking you because we are coming to the people of Trinidad and Tobago with the solutions. We're not here to cry down people to say that this one has done a poor job or this one is not doing a good job or not. That's all past. We're saying that as a nation, Trinidad and Tobago, all of us, for our families, for the children of the generations to come, we have to have long-term plans and medium-term plans to deal with the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. We have just heard the Moodys Report, which was not very favorable for Trinidad and Tobago. And one of the things that was highlighted in that Moodys Report was the absence of a medium-term plan for the economy. And I read a lot of the reviews from the government, people who represent the government, and they said that Moodys were unfair. And I asked myself, well, what is it? If Moodys said that there's no medium-term plan, they don't know what it is, I don't know what it is, so maybe the government knows what it is and they're not sharing it. And maybe they should. If they do, then we might say, well, you know, they must... Moodys was wrong about this. But I want us to be, let's be serious about this thing. When a financial institution downgrades a country, they're not downgrading the political party. I don't think that Moodys care whether the Prime Minister is UNC or PNM. I don't think Moodys care whether Trinidad and Tobago is run by this political organization or another political organization. They are looking at the nation Trinidad and Tobago and what's the strategic plan for the development of Trinidad and Tobago. So we ought not to look at this from political lenses. We ought to look at this in reality and say, what are we going to do to deal with the economic challenges that we face as a nation? So how do we deal with that? We have to first of all recognize that the whole economic model that we have must change. So if we start at that very basic, that the economic model must change. And how do you change that economic model? We change that economic model from total dependence on oil and gas to oil and gas and other industries. And that's where we start. We're not saying that we're not going to depend on oil and gas. We're saying, yes, we're depending on oil and gas, but we're doing oil and gas and other stuff. And that is where we're going to start with. So let's talk about oil and gas in the first thing. We have to look at the limited resources that we have and utilize it wisely. So it very likely would mean that the subsidy on gas will have to be reduced. That will mean that people will not be driving as much as they do now. And the Democratic Party talked again in previous episodes about a train system. So now people will be able to have a mass transit system to come into Port of Spain and to go into San Fernando and all the major towns quickly and efficiently and park their cars at home. So that means that we won't have that large government subsidy for gas and oil. But we have to offer incentives to oil companies to continue exploration. So I think that's nothing new. I think both governments have decided that that's a model that we have to look at and that we have to continue it in terms of getting foreign people to continue to invest and explore oil and gas. The difference with the Democratic Party is that although we explore oil and gas, we're now looking at utilizing that oil and gas in downstream industry. Now this is nothing new. The PNM, in their economic model, had planned to use that the downstream industry in terms of aluminum smelter plants and so on. And some people felt that it was not environmentally friendly and it might not have been the best model. But we have to look at those models and do not close the door on smelter. We have to look at all of those things and find what's the best way to utilize our oil and gas in downstream industries. And of course that would mean doing the hard work, the analysis to find out what is in demand and what is likely to be in demand in the medium term. So as we deal with oil and gas and downstream industries, that is just one sector of this new economic model that the Democratic Party of Trinidad and Tobago is planning for Trinidad and Tobago. In other words, we're saying we're moving away from total dependence on oil and gas to a more diversified economy. And one of the things that we have to do is part of that is to decrease our demand for foreign goods. And what does that mean? We have, a lot of people don't like to hear that because we have an appetite for a lot of things that are foreign. But the way to decrease our demand for foreign goods is by increasing our agricultural products. So that I believe, and the Democratic Party of Trinidad and Tobago believe, that we can have the best beef right here. We already are almost self-sufficient in chicken. So we can have the best beef right here, the best goats right here. So if we increase our livestock through that new plan for agriculture, certainly that would be less of a demand for foreign meats. In addition to that, while we are at agriculture, because we did a whole section on agriculture already, but we now have to look at goods that can bring foreign exchange to us. And right off the top of our head, we have a number of stuff which we can look at. Coconuts, we can look at cashew, we can look at citrus, we can look at ground provisions, and we could look at a whole lot of exotic fruits, mangoes and stuff, that we can not only produce for local consumption, but we can produce to sell as well. So agriculture has a very important part to play in this new economic model. Because agriculture, in addition to reducing our food import bills and our imported food, we're also looking to export. So tourism is one of those factors that we must look at in terms of how do we restructure the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. And as I said, that whole economic model must be a multi-pronged economic model. And the tourism sector of itself is multi-pronged. So that initially you're going to look at what our natural resources are. So we talk about the mountains and waterfalls, or reefs, or caves, or bird sanctuary, or beaches. All those are natural stuff that we are going to now have developed to an international standard for tourism. But it gets more exciting than that, in that we're also going to look at using Shaka Shikari as a separate area for development. So we have to look at Shaka Shikari as an area for cruise ships coming in. We have to look at Shaka Shikari as a place for casinos and for that sort of tourism where people can get there as an island resort. And then after we've looked at the natural stuff, we're now going to look at the other aspect of tourism, which is Carnival as a package. How do you package Carnival? How do you package the shows for Carnival? And that of itself is totally different from what you have today. In that over the last 40 years, the bands have made all the changes. So the bands have gone from the boring chipping behind a steel pan to now where you have all-inclusive bands with special facilities for people to have all their meals and their drinks and to look after themselves and so on. All that has developed. But while the bands have developed, the whole carnival structure itself have not changed, so that the bands, the reviewing stands are the same. You're still looking at downtown, and you're passing in at some really dilapidated sort of structures in terms of stage. The Queen's Park Savannah stage is the same old area that there's no innovative approach to carnival. The lighting remains the same, the facilities remain the same. People are you know, you have the stench of people urinating on the streets and so on after the parade. Woodbrook is a mess, the walls are a mess. So all of those things have to be repackaged now, so that you have a higher standard so that when a tourist or whoever comes to carnival, it should be a pleasant experience. They want to use toilet facilities, it's available. It should be available on every block, every corner. They want to sit and look at the parade, they should be able to do so in comfort. And the whole parade route should be one where you don't have people running in and out of bands in the haphazard manner that it happens right now. In other words, we have to repackage carnival. And that, just by repackaging alone, would make it a more attractive for tourism. And now we also have to now look at the steel pan as an industry. We've talked about the social aspect of the steel pan at another time, and we talked about making steel pan centers for youths where they can go and do more than learn pan, but they can learn music, and they can use it as centers where they can go and access internet and so on. But we also need to make the steel pan an area where you get there and it's a steel pan theater. And we have to do that as part of this new economic model, so that at any time you visit a pan center, you're going to have, it's almost like a theater district where you can get there and you can listen to the band at any time of the year, and not only at carnival. But in addition to that, we have to look at claiming the pan as Trinidad and Tobago's not only a discovery, but Trinidad and Tobago's invention. And therefore, I think that the world would want to know that the pan that they have, whether it's in Japan or whether it's anywhere in Europe or America, they want to know that I have an authentic Trinidad and Tobago steel pan. But you know something? In reality, let's look at where we are. The biggest steel pan producer in the world, the biggest high-tech steel pan production factory in the world is in Iowa, in the United States of America, not in Trinidad. We have been playing the pan and making the pan here for almost 100 years. Almost 100 years. But there is not a nationally recognized pan factory anywhere in the island. There are lots of people making pan all over the place, but there is no internationally recognized pan factory in Trinidad and Tobago. There is one in Iowa, and it's on the internet. And if you're wondering, you just go to paninc.com and you'll see everything about it. How they have high-tech pans that they're making there. And that, my friends, ladies and gentlemen, should be our Trinidad and Tobago, should be, that market should be that of Trinidad and Tobago. Considering that a tenner pan retails for close to $2,000 US. Obviously, there's a lot of money to be made locally and internationally if we market pan properly. So as part of this new economic plan that the Democratic Party has for Trinidad and Tobago, the pan factory will be one of that. In addition to that, so the other part of the tourism package that we're going to look at is using our people or social interaction. You know, we talk about the theaters and the dances and how you package the culture of Trinidad and Tobago so that it becomes internationally attractive. And that's one aspect again that we have to look at. So altogether, the tourism package is a fantastic and exciting package that the Democratic Party have discussed before, and that will help us in this new restructuring of the economy. In addition to that, so we've talked about how agriculture is helping, we've talked about tourism helping, and we've talked about downstream industries for oil and gas. What we have not spoken about is how do we, in this new economic model, deal with some of the recurrent expenditure, things that we spend over and over again, and the things like salaries for public servants. A lot of the local money that we spend, we are again depending on this income from oil and gas to help in that direction. And I'm saying that under this new model, it has to be different. So let's give an example of how different it is. Parking. If people, you have thousands of people coming into Port of Spain every day to park, and they cannot find parking, and you have the downtown owners, people complaining that it's not helping businesses in Port of Spain. Now, if we have parking meters or paid parking on the streets, because parking meters really is old school. Now you go to these units on the street and you pay for parking, and you get a little ticket that you put on your dashboard, and the parking attendants can now look and see that you have paid for parking on the streets. If you have thousands, and let's use a figure. Let's say we have 2,000 vehicles or 1,000 vehicles parking in Port of Spain every day. You have a minimum, and if you're charging $5 per park, you have a minimum of $5,000 every day that you're going to have in income. And I'm telling you, it's not that. It's going to be a lot more than that, because we're talking about people parking and there's a rotation in the whole parking. But what it means is that the city corporations will now not be dependent on central government for all their money, because they can get money from parking alone. But so in that new model, we have just used parking as an example, but we have to find ways of supplementing the income of our corporations and our communities, so that they don't have to depend on central government. So parking is one area. We have property taxes as another area in which they can raise money. We have paying for access to our beaches, and paying for access to the mountains, paying for access to tourist sites as a way of making money. We have another way of making money is for special highway tolls, so that if you're going to use the highway, especially when we are talking about the new highways that are in that new network of roads that the Democratic Party is planning for Trinidad and Tobago, so they'll have people paying directly back, and this money is going directly back into spending to maintain our roads and so on. So that the economy have to be structured in a way that you pay for what you get. Now, one of the things that we have to look at, and we talked about in terms of the economy, is healthcare. You see, healthcare is a major cost, and that cost is something that we have to look at in a serious way. You can't have central government paying the full brunt of healthcare. So we have to look at insurance and the way we restructure our healthcare. But the reason why I'm talking about in terms of the economic structure of Trinidad and Tobago is that we're hoping that in that restructuring of our healthcare services, that we can now have a lot of people from the islands and from the Caribbean and South America coming to Trinidad to access proper healthcare, which we can market properly. So all of this is this whole revision of the way we earn money, a revision of the way we spend money, is that whole new economic structure that will take us to where we need to be. So it's not doom and gloom if you look at where we are and you look at where we ought to be. And the democratic economy is critical to the development of Trinidad and Tobago, and we have to look at how we restructure the economy. So until next time, when we're going to look at the other visionary ideas from the Democratic Party of Trinidad and Tobago, remember that in order to get something you never had, you have to do something you never did, which is to vote for the Democratic Party of Trinidad and Tobago. May God bless our nation, and see you next time the DPTT speaks.
In the evening of my life I shall look to the sunset, and a moment in my life when the night is through.